Hey everybody, it's Mike Venus La Soul, and I'm back. And this is a video where I'm going more. I'm not coming at this guy. So if anybody see, oh, I see that guy's face, not coming at this guy, right? But um, he was reacting to the song Radiohead, Weird Fishes slash Arpeggi, right, from the Basement live performance, right? I think this is in Rainbow's album or something like that. And he typically like he's a teacher. He typically like somebody will either he will bring up a video and play it and then analyze it and kind of give like tips and tricks or explain what they're doing. And I enjoy watching this because it's kind of like what I'm experiencing right now in my process of making music, right? So to give a little back thought on his video, not this video, but another video he did, another response to a Radiohead performance in the basement from that um, live performance. He was like, I don't. He was like, this is not what I listen to, but somebody in that follows him or suggested it to him. He tried it out, and it was like it was kind of like how I was kind of feeling. It's like, okay, I like music, making music a certain kind of way, right? Like I already knew, like, okay, music has to have three elements: rhythm, harmony, melody, right? So I'm thinking, okay, harmony is just chords, and melody is melody and bass. I'll simplify the bass. I'll just take the root note of the chords and drop it down, and I'll put like a melody on top of the chords, and I'll add my drums, and it was kind of like my safe space. You know what I'm saying? Like he was saying, he couldn't really get into Radiohead when he heard them like years ago because of the fact that their approach to music wasn't from the same world of music that he knows or plays or is familiar with when learning his instrument, which was the guitar. And he comes from like blues, country, rock, those type of genres, which are pretty straightforward. And like he said, the harmony, the melodies are pretty straightforward and go a certain kind of way, and it's all about the groove, the feel, right? And then he hears this track and another track, and he was just kind of like, you can see him kind of like, I can't really identify what they're doing, and then you can see him kind of getting like, what is this? It's kind of weird. Mm, I'm not going to be judgmental, right? I'm going to be open. So I'm going to take my time and try to figure out what I'm hearing. Because you see that first response, like most people, whenever they're, you think you got something down and something's presented that you typically would not attempt to do in your own, but the first response is like a defense response, is to kind of be like, nah, I'm not gonna listen. But then it's like, okay, let me give it a chance. Let me listen and try to figure out what's going on. It's kind of like when somebody roll up on you speaking a different language. Whoa, I don't really understand what you're saying. I would typically ignore you, but you seem your energy feels okay. So I'm curious to try to understand what you're saying. So I'm going to listen, and I'm not going to be like, oh, you can't speak my language, I'm going to shut you down. So as the performance is going, and he's starting to listen and trying to figure out what was going on, he was like, oh, wow. Like, yeah, that's so cool. Like, they was like modulating between like modulating, shifting between the third of a major or minor third, you know what I'm saying, in a particular part of the song. And he was like, that's so cool. You know what I'm saying? And that's something I wouldn't personally do, but it's interesting, And then he's like, I have a more open respect for their approach to music. Then he heard this song, and it kind of blew his mind. Now, initially, if I would have heard the song, let's say a couple months back, I wouldn't understand what was going on. But because I'm just like this guy, I'm allowing myself to be curious, and I'm also allowing myself to be quick to listen. You know what I'm saying? Like James said, be slow to speak, slow to anger, and quick to listen. So I said, okay, I'm not gonna shut this down. I'm gonna listen. And I'm gonna try to figure out what they're doing. And even though he was like, it's kinda like you see his face lights up towards the end when he's explaining what he heard and what he's trying to figure out, and he's like, okay, the drums is like steady, stagnant, almost like on the grid type vibe, right? They don't switch up that much. It's pretty straight in the pocket. It's not swinging or slowly drifting. Nothing. It's on point, straight as you can get. But then you got three guitars playing three different arpeggios. Arpeggios are basically like playing a chord, spelling out a chord letter by letter, without playing it all together, which would be like a word. So cat is cat. You understand when I say cat, but if I spell it out CAT, you'd be like, okay, cat. It's still cat, but it's just spelled out. It's not cat. It's CAT. You understand? Right? So arpeggio is like that when it comes to chords. I could play a chord like he would understand when you play all the notes at the same time, or I can play the chord one note at a time. So you get to hear every individual note, and as they play in a sequence, right? You hear the chord. It's spelling out the chord. Well, one guitarist is playing a chord in one register, another guitarist is playing a chord, either the same chord or a complementary chord in a different register on a different part of the guitar, and the singer is also playing another arpeggio in a different register on a different place on the guitar. I don't know if it's the same chord or if it's a complementary chord, just voiced differently. And then they're playing at different rhythms, their own independent like rhythms and pacing and flow. And he's like, I can't figure out what's going on. I hear the bass too. And then you got the guy singing on top of it, right? I think his name's Tom, right? And if I didn't understand what I know now, what I've been learning the past like month and a half about counterpoint, or going back into the history to see where like when did we get to chords? You know what I'm saying? How does this work? And that's what kind of led me to counterpoint, and that time when it was developed, I would never been able to recognize what was going on. And I left a comment for him, so if he looks at it, he can go back and check it out. But it's like, it's simple. He was like, it's very simple. It's not too much going on, but it's different in the sense that it's not what he was used to doing, and I can appreciate that. And this kind of gets me into why I'm talking about this. It's like, okay, chords, right? I love chords, but I felt stuck, or kind of uninspired by just playing the same chords. You know what I'm saying? Or the same like common chord progressions based off of a particular mode or scale. You know what I'm saying? That works functionally for that. It's good to know. But then I was like, okay, you could still make something that what were they doing before chords? Because typically people think of chords as three note or triad, which is tri meaning three, and notes, three noted chords. This is where we get major, minor, augmented, and diminished. In this form of harmony in that facet, of, you know, three, four, five, etc. And not really get into harmonic intervals where you playing two notes, which is a dyad. Di meaning two, right? Dyad, right? So the only reason I got into that was because, like I said, and I've been saying recently, I'm working with synthesizers. I know if I was playing guitar, yeah, I could play a six note chord or these, more notes because the instrument is thin. It's not a thin sounding instrument. It's not just this sonic power. But I was like, I still want harmony. I love harmony, and harmony is part of the three main things of music: rhythm, harmony, and melody. But then I don't want to kind of rack my brain trying to figure out a melody over my harmony. And in essence, that can kind of block me up. So, like, what I was thinking was back when I played guitar, like, why did bands that use guitar and play like power chords or even octaves, why did they choose that? And why do their music sound different from other people who play on the same instrument, like fuller chords, three noted chords, or they're not using as much distortion or overdrive, and you can hear all the notes, and you kind of know what key you in. And then why would the ones that's using octaves and power chords, because there is no third, so there is no defining major or minor tonality to whatever you play on top of it. The lead guitarist or the other instruments that accompany that particular instrument that's playing the root can create what type of flow it is. So now you're moving out of thinking of harmony as being stagnant and blocky to now being more melodic and flowy. And it totally changed my perspective on harmony. To the point where I'm making now music with just intervals. You know what I'm saying? I got a bass and I have a top melody. The bass is moving melodically at its different rhythms and flow. And when it's played in conjunction with the top line, which is the melodic line, it has its own rhythm and flow. But when played together, it creates a harmonic texture known as polyphonic, right? And this is what they did before chords were invented, right? And it's opening up my perspective of how to look at different ways to create harmony or harmonic texture. Or think of harmony as a texture more than just a function of three or more notes that has to be played at this, in this sequence or this progression, in this order, that's bound to this key or bound to this scale. You know what I'm saying? And my mind is like wide open, bro. I feel like Doctor Strange when he first met the ancient one, and she put the thumb on his third eye, and that dude was like got pushed into the astral world. He's going everywhere, and he's like, seeing all this shit. His mind is just being open. Cause I'm like, bro, I can still make a song that still has rhythm, still has melody, and still has harmony. But I'm looking at it from a different perspective, where I don't judge those that use chords or how I used to do music with chords. I will still write music like that if I'm using a certain instrumentation that it will be more suiting for me to play 3, 4, 5, 6 noted chords, because the instrument can have clarity over the sonics of it being so powerful, you know, and loud where the sounds become mudded. So yeah, if I'm writing a piece for piano or if I'm writing a piece for guitar or I'm gonna take what I write on that and turn it into a string section or a flute section, then I can do that. You know, because those instruments can play that and it will sound harmonically rich. Then if I try to do the same thing with something like brass, or bass or double bass, it would just be like, whoa, this is too low, this is too muddy. So it's like it's just another tool in the toolbox, and I wish that these people, because there's a lot of influencers on YouTube that are the influencers. I don't even know if they know this or they are open to it. You know what I'm saying? Like, okay, or even thinking that facet. And I really enjoyed this video because at the end you see not only that he gained a level of respect for them that he might didn't, subconsciously know he didn't have for them, but he appreciate their approach to writing a song that is contrary to what he normally would do, but he never thought of doing it in that way. And he might never attempt to do it in that way, but he gained an appreciation for it. And I like that. A lot of people don't have that on social media or just in life when it comes to things. They're speaking the same language, they're communicating. It's just in a different way. You understand? So yeah, I'm not, you know, I could talk chords with people. I can write it out. But when it comes to what I'm making and what the instrumentation I'm using, I'm going to move more towards thinking of harmony, not as chords, but more as a texture, like a polyphonic texture. And counterpoint is one way I can do it. I can do pedal points, you know. That's another topic I might go into and kind of explain what that is, because I know a lot of this, like a lot of the beat makers, I'm trying to get you in the mindset of thinking beyond just sampling, you know. Yeah, that's a great starting point if you're just trying to get into the functionality of making beats. But then you wanna level up and get to the point where you're able to write your own loops or your own compositions where you can sample them and manipulate them to make your beats. If this is what you want to do, if you're trying to obtain um, monetization on your works, if you're just doing it just to share with people, the same. What I'm saying doesn't. You can still apply it, but it wouldn't really like. That's not who I'm really like speaking to. But you can listen on it. Hey, you should always be open to learn, but it's really for that audience. If you're really trying to make music, but you want to kind of like change your perspective and try a different approach to it, but still you're doing the same thing, open up your mind to trying it in a different fashion than just repeating the same process. You know, like I'm not gonna sit. I don't think I ever will sit down and make just 10 beats in a day. That's just to me, that's overkill. Especially with the shit I got going on. I got migraines going on, or triggering it like every other day or consistently for weeks on out. You know what I'm saying? I can't just sit there and pound out 10 beats. But if I can focus and apply these different things to one beat and make it high quality, I think that's more being more productive and more beneficial for what I want to do, which is still make music and share it and publish it to make money off of it and also to enrich other people's listening experience. You know what I'm saying? While still staying authentic to myself. So let me know what you think about this. Um, yeah, Radiohead is tough. Radiohead is they nice. I know it's not for everybody, but they do a lot of like I'll say very sophisticated approaches towards music and their arrangement and composition. And if even if you don't know what they're doing, it's still cool to listen to. You know, just be like, you know what? I just want to listen